we got to kick off with the sort of bigger picture, haven't we? The times that we're living in, we're all living in uncertain times. How strange is it to be running a football club at the moment? And from Fleetwood Town's perspective and your perspective, how tough have the last few weeks been with a managerial change and a COVID outbreak and self-isolation and finally getting back into action?
Well, I would say these are clearly extraordinary times, and I'm used to crisis. Crisis happens from time to time. We had lockdown 1, and for me, one of the most frustrating parts of COVID and the lockdowns is you don't know when they're going to end. So it makes it very difficult to plan for the future. We don't know when we're going to start to get some revenue streams again open for the football club. So it's very difficult to plan financially. We don't know from week to week if we are going to be able to fulfill fixtures. Desperately want to fulfill fixtures. I think we have to find a way to fulfill fixtures. But sadly, we have had some games off because of positive cases within our camp and within opposition camps. But, this is when the times are tough, you have to have that blitz spirit and you have to ride out the storm. And that's what we're all about here at Fleetwood Town.
Football is continuing, and I think most people within football want it to continue. And certainly people who are football fans are very keen to have it to watch and be involved with. How hard is it? How clear is it from the authorities when you do postpone a game, when you should postpone a game, and when you're able to carry on? Because you've been in that situation, haven't you, where COVID cases have meant self-isolation, meaning games couldn't go ahead. But I also believe there have been occasions where there have been some cases, some people still self-isolating and games have gone ahead.
It's been really tough. Over the last 11 months, it's been really, really hard. It's well documented. There was hardly any testing going on initially. And so we have this situation whereby the pandemic lands and we don't know who's actually infectious and who can end up spreading this to the teammates and the wider public and who isn't. I think times have changed gradually for the better. There's been huge progress thanks to the EFL and the PFA with the rapid testing programme that has come out over the last few days. That means that we now have tests within the football club that will tell us as soon as 5 minutes if somebody is positive or not. So that's probably contributed to some more accurate data. It's been really high, our cases over the last few weeks. We've had 17 across the camp, which is 17 positive cases. That's not all players, that is staff as well. But nonetheless, that's a huge proportion of our staff. And thankfully, we're coming out the other end now. But it's been very, very difficult. We do feel like it's getting somewhat better now with the advanced testing. But we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But the job's not done yet, Dan.
How do you see this panning out? I know this is a crystal ball situation, but there's still a lot of conjecture and speculation about whether football will and can continue in the form that it is without spectators and without those revenue streams. Do you anticipate the season finishing? And how long can Fleetwood carry on kind of as you are without that revenue coming in?
I do expect the season to be completed. I hope lessons are learned from last season. If it means that the season has to be slightly extended, then I think that is a price worth paying to retain sporting integrity. And I think in difficult times like this, we have to always find a way whenever possible. Safety must always be of paramount importance, but I do believe we can find a way to complete the season. And financially, it's incredibly difficult. It's well documented. But again, we just have to find a way through this. I mean, there is some light now at the end of the tunnel. It's very dark right now in the tunnel, but the light, there's a glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel because we can see the vaccinations are starting to be rolled out. And if we've got 24/7 vaccinations now going on, hopefully in a few weeks, a few months, we can have some normality back.
Let's talk about some of the on-the-field matters that have coincided with this outbreak of COVID that you've had at the club. I know you went on social media and said about Joey Barton when his time came to an end with the club that you had to make a difficult decision. just talk us through what you can share with us in terms of that decision-making process and why you felt it was time for Joey's time to end.
I will, gladly, yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I'd like to reiterate Joey Barton's stay at the club has been a huge success. And I think it's been very good for Joey. Joey is now a football manager. He has an impressive CV. He's took a club that was perhaps underachieving to the playoffs and to the very close to promotion to the championship. He's helped us obtain some outstanding players that might have been slightly more difficult without a manager of his profile. And I think it's been great for Joey. I think it's been great for Fleetwood Town. One thing I have learned over the last 16 years in football, and Joey will learn this over what will no doubt be a long career as a footballing manager, is from time to time, you need a change. You need a different voice. You need a change in leadership. And I think both parties recognised that that time had probably come. So it was what I can only describe as an elegant exit. It was with a firm handshake and a thank you very much. We'll stay in touch, and it's been good for both parties.
Would we describe this as mutual consent, Andy, or was this your decision that Joey agreed to?
It was ultimately my decision, but it was also, as you describe it, very much with Joey's understanding and Joey's agreement.
And just in terms of needing to make a change or feeling like time was right to make a change, your past experience, at times you've made these big decisions and people have raised eyebrows and said, what a strange time to do it, or football can be very cutthroat and very ruthless. Does that make it easier or harder to make another decision like that might raise eyebrows?
Well, I think you always try and live and learn in life and in business, whatever the business may be. If it's football, if it's some other commercial entity. And I would like to think I've learned lessons. Clearly, I will have made mistakes over my business and my footballing career. But again, I've got to stand and I've got to fall by the decisions that I make. These are big decisions. And the one priority, really the principle of any decision that I make at Fleetwood Football Club is I must believe in my heart of hearts it's best for the football club. It's in the best interest of the football club. And I felt at the time, and I still do now, it's in the best interest of the football club. So hence why that decision was made.
And with a guy with the reputation, with the profile of Joey Barton, there will be speculation, there'll be talk, there'll be column inches about why this might have come about. Just to clarify, it had run its course. It was a kind of future of the club decision rather than a specific incident, results, anything like that.
Absolutely, yeah. It was, as I say, it was very much an elegant exit. I had numerous contacts from various different media outlets who seemed desperate to create a problem when there really is, when there isn't one. And much to their disappointment, this was, when you have these conversations, it's always easier if you've fallen out with the other party and you think, right, I've had enough of you. I really need to part company. But it was with a heavy heart, and it was tough because I like Joey on a personal and a business level, but I felt it was in the best interest of the football club.
Now you have a new man in the dugout, albeit in an interim role. Talk to us about Simon Wiles, who's now, of course, taken charge for the first time and had a few training sessions. What about him stands out for you?
Well, Simon's been very much on my radar for a long time now. We believe he's an outstanding, young, intelligent coach. We think tactically he's very astute, he's very sharp, and we think he's got all the skill sets, all the attributes to be a really, really good manager. We're at a stage now whereby I want to make the right decision here. I don't want to make the quickest possible decision. Simon's very much in the right place at the right time, and he's going to get his opportunity. And I'm not going to be in any rush to make any appointments. I'll be delighted if Simon does what we all believe he's capable of and takes the reins. And really what I'm looking for is I'm looking for sporting success. I think those playoffs are still in touching distance. And I also want to see a pathway for players from the academy. I want to see players being able to get through to the first team. And I can talk about pathways for players, but it's very important that we have pathways for coaches as well. And so Simon's been with us for a while. He's earned his stripes, and now he gets his opportunity as our interim manager.
Have you spoken to other candidates? Are you considering other avenues, or is it very much a case of Simon has come through and you're going to give him a period of time to prove himself and almost have an audition for the job?
I've had lots of interest. There's been lots of CVs. I think it's well documented that Fleetwood's a fantastic club to be at, because you will get an opportunity. You'll get a reasonable budget. You've got a fantastic training facility and an incredible chairman as well. So I think that is always going to be something which attracts managers to Fleetwood. And what I've done is I've responded to as many people as I can. I was literally drowning in an avalanche of applications last week. But the message has been just what's been relayed now to your good self, Dan, is that we're taking stock. This doesn't need to be a quick knee-jerk appointment. We're not in danger of relegation. We have to get somebody in to get us out of the mire. We're in a good, strong position. And we want to take stock. We may well speak to some people, but right now it's about supporting Simon. It's about getting through a very, very difficult period of time for the football club with COVID, with the financial issues that are occurring, and getting back to winning ways and getting back in those playoffs.
So I guess if we're talking timeframes, there isn't really a set one, but we know it's not going to be the lower end of that. We're not going to be talking a few days or a few weeks until Simon reverts back to his day-to-day job and you bring someone in.
No, that's absolutely correct. Simon's got the job on an interim basis, and gradually we'll take stock. We'll see how Simon's doing. He may be ready for it. It might be that Simon's ready for being part of the first team squad. I really think he's got every chance. I think he's got all the attributes we're looking for. I really do. But we're keeping our powder dry. We're going to give Simon all the support we possibly can as a football club. We really hope he's successful.
Has he indicated to you that he wants the job full time? Because we always stick microphones under caretaker or interim managers' noses and say, do you want the job? And they have to try and say something diplomatic, so we never find out.
Simon's delighted to have got the opportunity as an interim. And I'm certain that he would want the job on a permanent basis, because he's an ambitious young man who wants to manage at the very top level. But we haven't really had that conversation. It's more been a case of, let's get you introduced to the players. Let's just get the show on the road, and let's get back to playing football and sort of racking some points up.
It is January, of course, inevitable transfer window question. Is there anything available for him to go into the transfer market and to add to that squad?
I think where we're at, we're likely to probably need to trim the squad if we are to get anybody in. Again, well documented that very, very difficult financial times, and we desperately want to succeed on the pitch, but we also need to make sure that we can pay all the bills, and it's incredibly tough right now. So we just need to monitor that situation moving forwards, and we'll support him all we can. But again, these are incredibly tough times that we're currently in.
Do you think it's going to have an effect across football? Because salary caps and financial measures that are been put in place, as well as a lack of revenue coming through. Do you think this might be a selling transfer window, or one that not a lot happens in because of those constraints?
I think a lot of clubs are likely to look at perhaps selling players in order to balance the books. That's my personal opinion. However, all clubs vary. Many clubs are owned by incredibly wealthy people, and they may see this as an opportunity to roll the dice and to climb a division and to then be able to hold their own at the next level. I think the salary caps are really, really good news, because that helps football become sustainable. And moving forward, we really want football to be sustainable, and we want to be talking about what goes on the pitch rather than what's going on with the administrators, etc.
And just lastly, I wanted to ask you about producing players, academy system, and bringing players through, because I think a couple of the subjects that we've talked about this afternoon kind of tie into that. If you can produce players, you've got assets. They don't cost you as much money as if you have to buy them, and also with the uncertain times, that can be very helpful as well in terms of producing them in-house. Is there very much a conscious effort now to promote academy talent and bring young players through, and maybe not recruit older players in favour of these younger guys?
Well, I mean, it's very important to us that our academy is aligned with our first team, and that there is a clear pathway for players to progress from the academy and ultimately to the first team. And from the first team, we'd be delighted if they end up in the championship, hopefully with us, or if not with us, with somebody else, and ultimately with the Premier League. That is what we are about as a football club. We've got an outstanding training ground. It was great to see we had 4 teenagers in the starting 11 last night away at Hull City, and we came within probably 20 seconds of penalties. So really, really good performance with a very young and COVID hit team.
Do you have to be a bit more patient with young players and young managers, maybe?
I think you do, yeah. And I think it comes down to how you measure success. And what I want at my football club is I want sporting success, but I also want to be able to create stars of the future. I want to be able to develop assets. I want to shake their hands and watch them on Match of the Day on a Saturday night. And that's what Pillfoot's all about.
Thank you very much, Andy.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, Andy. You all right, mate?
I'm really good. How are you, Tom?
I'm good, thank you very much. I just wanted to touch on who you were mentioning to Dan about, no rush for the new manager, things like that. Is it a case of, because you say that relegation isn't too much for a threat, the playoffs are still a chance, but is it a case of taking your time and trying to set yourself up for another period like Joey had, a good few years where you can see that sort of progression in the club?
No, I wouldn't say so. What I would say is I think we've still got every chance. I think we've got a really, really strong squad. We're only 4 points off fourth position. And if we put a few wins together, we will cement ourselves in the playoffs. And I look at our squad and I know there's real quality. We need some players back from injury, and we need to get some players free of COVID. And once that occurs, I'd back us against anybody. And when I've seen us against the top teams, I think Hull are one of the best teams in League One. And we gave them a really good run for the money. So I don't think it's about building for future seasons. I think promotion is very much on this season. If we can click and if we can get a few wins together.
You mentioned COVID there. How much of an impact is obviously the testing and things like that? Because you've got all these running costs as it is. Revenue streams are limited, and then you add in the COVID testing, things like that. How difficult can that be as a club?
It's really difficult because what seems to be happening is we are incurring extra costs all the time, things like 2 coaches and testing and things like that. And we have lost our traditional revenue streams. We've lost a lot of money that comes in from Pillfoot. We've lost gate receipts. We've lost all sorts of other revenue streams that under normal circumstances would come flowing into the football club.
Obviously, there's talk about trying to get money coming through from the EFL, things like that. Do you think there needs to be a real good structure of support and cash flow down the pyramid?
I think what needs to happen is I think there needs to be a restructure of the distribution of the money that comes from the Premier League, because I've said in the press before, I think parachute payments are absolutely wrong. How can it be right that Watford will get 44 million and Blackburn will get 8 million, and then they're in the same league? That just seems totally illogical. I think we need to look after the clubs in League One and League Two, much more so. And a combination of that and the salary cap, I think football can become sustainable. And that's how the game should be. Again, we shouldn't be talking about points per game, and we shouldn't be talking about clubs losing 10 or 15 points and famous clubs going to the wall. We should be talking about goals that have been scored and fabulously entertaining matches.
When it can be so tempting to just chuck a bit of extra money at it and go for it this season and things like that, because you see that quite a lot. On reflection of the way this pandemic has hit, are you kind of thankful that you've never taken that approach and you never risked anything like that, if that makes sense?
Well, what I'd say is, in the non-league days, we did to a degree. We took a view that we wanted to be a football league club, and we backed the managers at the time, and we signed some fantastic players here, Steve McNulty's and Jamie Vardy's and people like that. And thankfully, they catapulted us into the football league. Football's very different now because we have the salary cap, and it comes down to now. Really, you have to get the best value for money. And you have to have the best coach, the best manager, the best culture, and the best tactics. And to me, again, I think that that's what football should be all about, rather than people overspending, which subsequently may well cause problems in the future.
And in terms of transfers, obviously you said it's more a case of people would have to go out for those to come in. With Ched leaving, does that mean that you're now potentially in the market for another striker, or are you still happy with the way the squad is at the moment? Or
We're at a stage now whereby we have a meeting scheduled in the next 48 hours, and we're going to have a look at what's actually out there, what we've got, what we haven't got. It's very, very tough. So we have to first and foremost ensure that everyone's getting paid, we're paying the bills, and equally, we still want to make sure that we've got a hell of a squad in place. And if we do need an extra body, we'll do all we can to get that extra body in. But as it stands, that remains to be seen.
And obviously, with the manager leaving and the director of football leaving as well, has that changed the dynamic slightly as you approach the transfer market and not having a permanent manager in place at the moment? Do you sign players that Simon Wiles would want and hope that he does well and things like that, or is it just a case of a club decision and things like that?
Well, any players or any player that we bring in, Simon Wiles, as the interim manager, would have a huge say in if he thinks that player will make us better. We would never sign a player without consulting the manager. And I think it has to be a team effort on and off the pitch. If Simon needs to be on the grass and he needs to be coaching the players, perhaps somebody else can be making the phone calls and seeing who's available and who isn't.
And in terms of the way the pandemic has affected the club, things like obviously there's the plans for the training dome and trying to improve on things at Fleetwood all the time. How much has this impacted kind of the pace that you're able to do those sorts of things, or even the plans themselves as a whole?
Well, the plans are actually submitted with the council as we speak, but as to when these plans will be able to come to fruition is very much up in the air, because the challenge is, Tom, that we simply don't know when the pandemic's going to end. We don't know when we're going to get some normality. So we've got to keep taking stock of where we're at. And we're committed to making the football club better all the time. But first and foremost, we have to pay the bills, and we've got to pay the staff as well.
How hard was that to get used to in terms of it pretty much will be like a month by month basis, depending on restrictions, lockdown restrictions, all these sorts of things that are changing all the time. And even when they say this is the plan, the next week it might be completely different anyway. How difficult is that to kind of get your head around as a club and with so many people involved in the club?
It's really, really strange because, as you've described, normally if you have a challenge, you'll sit down and you'll discuss and you'll find a way through and over whatever the obstacle may be. But what's really difficult is if you don't know how long this problem is going to be in play for, and if you don't know if it's going to get any worse or any better, it's so hard to actually know what the right move to make is. So we're literally talking on a daily basis, and we're making sure that we make the right moves.